Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Hare
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, Chapter 5, text number 32. Please repeat after me. Naishamatistavat urukramangrim. Naishamatistavat urukramangrim. Sprushati anartapagamo yadartaha. Sprushatyanartapamagamo yadartaha. Mahiyasam padarajobhishekam. Mahiyasam padarajobhishekam. Niskinchana navranita yavat. Niskinchana navranita yavat. Naishamatistavadurukramangrim. Sprushatanartapamagomo yadartaha. Mahiyasam padarajobhishekam. Niskinchana navranita yavat. Naishamatistavadurukramangrim. Sprushati anartapagamo yadartaha. Naisam padarajobhishekam. Niskinchana navranita yavat. Naishamatistavadurukramangrim. Sprushatyanartapagamo yadartaha. Mahiyasam padarajobhishekam. Nishkinchananam navranita yavat. Word to word translation. Na, not. Esham, of these. Matihi, the consciousness. Tavat, that long. Urukrama Angrim, the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is famous for performing uncommon activities. Sprushati, does touch. Anartha, of unwanted things. Apagamaha, the disappearance. Yat, of which. Artaha, the purpose. Mahiyasam, of the great souls, the Mahatmas or devotees. Padarajaha, by the dust of the lotus feet. Abhishekam, consecration. Niskinchananam, of devotees who have nothing to do with this material world. Na, not. Vrinita, may accept. Yavat, as long as. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined towards materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for His uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord in this way can one be freed from material contamination. Purport. Becoming Krishna conscious brings about anartha apagamaha. the disappearance of all anarthas, the miserable conditions we have unnecessarily accepted. The material body is the basic principle of these unwanted miserable conditions. The entire Vedic civilization is meant to relieve one from these unwanted miseries. But persons bound by the laws of nature do not know the destination of life. As described in the previous verse, Ishatantriyam urudam na baddaha. They are conditioned by the three strong modes of material nature. The education that keeps the conditioned soul bound life after life is called materialistic education. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakura has explained that materialistic education expands the influence of Maya. Such an education induces the conditioned soul to be increasingly attracted to materialistic life and to stray further and further away from liberation from unwanted miseries. One may ask why highly educated persons do not take to Krishna consciousness. The reason is explained in this verse. Unless one takes shelter of a bona fide, fully Krishna conscious spiritual master, there is no chance of understanding Krishna. The educators, scholars, and big political leaders, worshipped by millions of people, cannot understand the goal of life and take to Krishna consciousness, for they have not accepted a bona fide spiritual master and the Vedas. Therefore, in the Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3, it is said, Nayam Atma Pravachanena Labhyo Na Medaya Na Bahunashrutena. One cannot become self-realized simply by having an academic education. By presenting lectures in an erudite way, pravachanena labhyaha, or by being an intelligent scientist who discovers many wonderful things. One cannot understand Krishna unless one is graced by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only one who has surrendered to a pure devotee of Krishna and taken the dust of his lotus feet can understand Krishna. First, one must understand how to get out of the clutches of Maya. The only means is to become Krishna conscious. And to become Krishna conscious very easily, one must take shelter of a realized soul, a Mahat or Mahatma, whose only interest is to engage in the service of the Supreme Lord. As the Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita 9.13, Mahatmanastumam partha daivim prakritimashvritaha bhajanti ananya manaso gnatva bhutadim avyayam. O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Therefore, to end the unwanted miseries of life, one must become a devotee. Yasyasti bhaktir bhagavatya kinchana sarvair gunais tatra samasate suraha. One who has unflinching devotional faith in Krishna constantly manifests all the good qualities of Krishna and the demigods. Bhagavatam 5:18-12. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata guru yasaiti katitahi artaha prakashante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all the imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Shvetoshvatara Upanishad 6.23. Yame Vaisha Vinute Tena Labhyas Tasyaish Sa Atma Virunate Tanum Swam. The Lord is obtained only by one who he himself chooses. To such a person he manifests his own form. Mundaka Upanishad 3.2.3. These are Vedic injunctions. One must take shelter of a self-realized spiritual master, or not a materially educated scholar or politician. One must take shelter of a niskinchana, a person engaged in devotional service and free from material contamination. That is the way to return home back to Godhead. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Agnana Timirandasya Agnananjana Shalakaya Chekshurun Militam Yenam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Itinamine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschyata Deshatarane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktaranda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Unless they smear upon their bodies the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava, completely freed from material contamination, persons very much inclined towards materialistic life cannot be attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, who is glorified for his uncommon activities. Only by becoming Krishna conscious and taking shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord, in this way, one can be freed from material contamination. So we see here, Prahlad Maharaj is continuing his preaching to his classmates. And he is revealing a very important secret of how to become a devotee of the Lord. And what is the advantage of becoming a devotee? Then they can be freed from anartha apagamaha, freed from material contaminations. It's important to understand, the real import of these words. Anartha, Prabhupada is telling, becoming Krishna conscious brings about anartha apagamaha, the disappearance of all anarthas, the miserable conditions we have unnecessarily accepted. Anartha. Technically, in Sanskrit, the word anartha means na artaha iti anartha. Na artaha. Anybody knows what artha means? In this context, artha, there are meanings of those words, but artha here means of value. It has got some meaning in life. Right? So, for example, if you think about all the different anarthas that a living entity gets entangled in, right? From childhood, let's think about, childhood, brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha and sannyas, right? You can get entangled in anarthas, in all the 4 ashramas. But hopefully, by the time you reach vanaprastha or sannyas, you have gotten sannyas. One should not even take sannyas if you have not gotten rid of anarthas, right? So, can you take some examples of what are the anarthas that bind a living entity in their childhood and youth? Let's start with childhood first. Playing all the time. Right? There's a watching TV, there's a newer anartha. But just think about what a childhood means, right? Everybody, childhood means play. Right? They will make up some make-believe thing. See, you are a police and I am a thief. I'll go hide. You find me. Right? And then whole day they'll keep playing the same thing. They'll go hide here, they'll go hide there. You're a police, you can. Right? Is there any meaning from that play? Right? Nobody is police. Nobody is thief. Nobody is getting any medal for catching the thief. Or nobody is getting paid for doing either of those things. Neither by robbing are you getting any money. Right? When you take examples like that, it starts becoming a little bit, oh, yeah, it's a totally useless waste of time. Right? Now, if I call both of you and say, Pratik, Shijish, go play hide and seek. What do you think you'll do? But the same pleasure won't come out of it. Right? What is that? When children are playing, it's not that somebody is forcing them to play. Is anybody forcing them to play? They are happily playing and they're getting so much pleasure out of it. You stop them from playing, they will start crying. Right? It is said that when Krishna was playing in Vrindavana with his friends, his mother had to, Yashoda Mai had to go out and call him, hey, enough of playing, come back home. Right? But they still want to keep on playing. There is so much of pleasure in that thing. Now, in this material world, all the things that are beautiful and enjoyable in the spiritual world have a perverted reflection over here. Right? Now, a child who goes on playing and only playing and not studying, what happens to them? Right? Nobody is saying what happens to them. Huh? And which becomes a very miserable life. You had some enjoyment for a few years. Oh, yeah, I had a lot of enjoyment. And then the rest of your life, you are slogging like a donkey in a small job that hardly pays you anything. Like in California, like in the Bay Area, right? If somebody is living in Milpitas, can you really live with minimum wage? Right? Even if you say $20 an hour, not a minimum wage is then 12 or 15 nowadays. What is 15 means? In a year you will make about $30,000. Right? You can't pay rent for a small house. Like literally in a studio you can't pay rent. Right? So, there is these anarthas lead to miseries. And then what happens after childhood? Youth. Like what time, what? Education. That is also anartha in a different sense, but there is, at least from a materialistic perspective, there is artha in that. Yes. no, running after, the opposite sex. Right? Youth. Huh? Yeah. And people, especially nowadays, right? We were saying, let's talk about in the modern context what happens. Childhood. They become, their childhood itself, they're learning, watching all these TVs and all those things and become completely messed up in their brains. It is so unfortunate to see that, some of these children who come to our summer camp and all that, these Matajis are putting so much of effort with so many activities that they are, setting up for them. And they're keeping them engaged. And the children come over there, after 10 minutes, after 10-15 minutes, they will say, I'm bored. They put some, some little bit of a Krishna or something like that for some time. They'll watch 5 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm bored. Right? Because they're so used to this, sitting and watching this and all the time. But is it helpful? Is it something that's going to make them this? No. You develop that kind of attraction for that kind of useless things, and it has consequences. Research has shown that children who spend a lot of time in front of TV, this thing and all that, their cognitive ability is very seriously diminished. Very, very seriously diminished. Permanent damage to the brain. Because in the young age, the brain is like, it's like a sponge. It is supposed to absorb information and build the basis of your entire life. Right? It's no different than, like I keep saying, this is digital intoxication. For a small child, you give them liquor and make them intoxicated. Will that help the child? Right? So, the best way to understand this is, for example, it has been proven, why there is a minimum age for drinking alcohol. Right? Because, one thing is, it can be misused significantly. I'm saying not that, there's any use out of alcohol, but even for a person, materialistically also. Right? It's been shown that drinking alcohol when they are young, it permanently kills brain cells. They're permanently dead. Neither they'll ever come back or they'll ever this thing. So it's very, very dangerous. In fact, when a mother is pregnant, right, and the mother drinks alcohol, the children will have serious mental illnesses. Right? And so, there is a reason. So similarly, the concept we should apply is the same. Digital intoxication is exactly like physical intoxication. There is not much difference. Just that the means is different. Now, when these youth, they spend so much time running after the opposite sex. Right? What all they do? You see, boys and girls waste time little differently. Right? How do boys waste time? Huh? Sports. But I'm talking about, that's running after each other kind of adjust. I will come to sports. Seems to come out of experience or something. Both boys, each of them spends time differently. Women, children, girls, right? They become aware of their bodies and all that. And they spend inordinate amount of time getting ready. Right? Hair, this, that, makeup. Inordinate amount of time, like 30% of their life is spent, putting this, putting that on, putting this on, taking this on, taking that off. What a waste of human life. What are you getting out of it? Right? Like I said, boys, see, what is meant to be a very simple thing, and is it pleasurable? It is always associated with misery. Right? There is breakup, there is this problem, that problem, all kinds of miserable conditions. That's why Prabhupada is summarizing it and saying the material body is the basic principle of these unwanted miserable conditions. Right? Then afterwards, a young person gets married, has a wife, then children, and then family, and this and that. So many responsibilities they take on. Right? And finally, children are educated, they're out of the house. Now you can practice Krishna consciousness, practice Vedic philosophy. Is that what happens? Now what do they do now? At least that is some useful thing, but they're going out. They'll replace the children with cats and more dogs. And it is again like, you'll see this, it's a very common thing. As soon as, they call it empty nest syndrome. Right? Empty nest, when the children are educated and go away, immediately they'll go and get one more new dog. Right? Because the nature of the living entity is to serve. They'll keep serving, somebody. Right? They spend so much time. So Prabhupada summarizes and says this material body, as long as you have this material body itself is an anartha. It is not necessary. Right? Why is this material body an anartha? Why is this material body an anartha? Because it creates bondage. Right? Sense perception and all that. Okay, what else? So material body creates desires. Okay? We have a spiritual body with which we can enjoy Sat Chit and Ananda unlimitedly. Now you have taken on a material body which is Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi, Dukkha, Doshanu, Darshanam. It is meant to give you darshana. Not darshan of Krishna Balram or Srinivas Govinda or Narsimha. It's giving you darshana of dukkha and dosha. Dukkha, doshanu, darshanam. All kinds of miseries. Right from birth, it's a misery. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadi. Right? So imagine, this is such a designed machine. Anything you think gives you sense gratification. Like for example, some sense gratification. Invariably, it is designed, this body is designed to give you a lot of misery from that sense gratification itself. Right? Simple thing like eating. Right? In fact, there is a very common terminology. Right? They call it stress eating. Right? Is it not a common thing? Call it stress eating. When somebody is stressed, they eat so much and they get actually very obese. Why? Because in the Shastras it is said, Annamaya consciousness. Right? That is the lowest level of consciousness, is Annamaya. See, one should think for a second. When Krishna was creating all these different kinds of bodies, right? There is a peculiarity about human body. See, for example, you are born as a snake. Right? You know how often snakes eat? Anybody knows? There are many snakes like a python, Burmese python and anaconda and these big snakes, right? They'll eat one big animal and they will take, first of all, to digesting that animal only takes 1 month, 2 months to digest. And then they have energy there. They don't use much energy there. Next 5 months, 6 months, they don't have to eat. Many months they don't eat. Even smaller snakes also they'll eat once in a week, once in 2 weeks. There's not that 3 times a day they have to eat. Many animals like a tiger. A tiger doesn't eat every day. It doesn't eat breakfast, lunch and dinner. It doesn't do that. You go study all these animals, most of the animals don't do that. So, a human body is like, because there is supposed to be some pleasure associated with eating. But a simple thing like eating can cause so much miseries. Right? You get attached to this thing. Invariably, if you are not dharmena hina pashubi samanaha, if there is no dharma, there is no regulation in what you eat and all that, invariably what will happen? You will eat all kinds of nonsense and your action results in serious sinful activities. Right? And then there is so much of troubles associated with this. So like that, the Shastras are saying, this body itself is a big anartha. We don't need this body. If we had our own spiritual body, all this different dukkha doshana darshanam would instantly stop. Now, so we have understood now that there is a problem with this body. Now the second thing that Prabhupada says is, why does material education not lead a person to Krishna consciousness? If you know that there is a problem, this body is source of misery, all these anarthas are causing us pain, then when you are study and you become intelligent, shouldn't you understand these problems and become liberated? Right? So Prabhupada is saying, no, actually materialistic education itself is a problem. What happens? The education that keeps the conditioned soul bound life after life is called materialistic education. Such an education induces the conditioned soul to be increasingly attracted to materialistic life and to stray further and further away from liberation from unwanted miseries. What happens is that materialistic education in this world reinforces our materialistic concept of life. Right? Somebody, goes through this years of schooling over here. Right? I'm just only talking about what they teach in schools from a subject matter perspective. What happens to a child that goes through this materialist education? At best, what can come out of it? You get a good job, good money. I'm talking about what knowledge are they teaching? What understanding of the world are you getting? Huh? See, what happens is, you are learning over here how matter works. How we know, how does this move, how does that work? And with that knowledge, the world is telling you, you work hard, you understand how this works, you can be happy. You don't need anything else. Why do you need God? Everything follows rules. There are rules in this world. You learn these rules and then you can live a wonderful life. You learn the rules of electronics. See what I have created over here. It's unlimited information. One small device like this. You can do whatever you want from this. And so the confidence that this material world, we have conquered this material world. What do scientists say? Every year, every age, you go back and study science. Now we are studying 2020s. What about you go back 100 years? In the 1920s, scientists were saying, oh, we have conquered the world. We have conquered flight. Right? Somewhere around that time, I think, right? We'll all fly to this thing. We'll fly off to, then they'll write science fiction. You go read the science fiction in the 1920s. Oh, we'll be, flying in all the universes and we'll capture this and capture that. And everybody says, oh, we'll become immortal. Every age, every millennium, everybody has their own fancy. What will happen in the future? You go today and ask scientists, what will happen in the future? They will say, oh, we'll have this and we'll have that. We'll go to Mars. We'll colonize Mars. Right? We'll become an intergalactic species. We'll become. Right? See, when we were children in the 80s, oh, in the next 30 years, this will happen. I remember when I was growing up in high school and all that, there was so much talk about cryogenic freezing. All big people, they were freezing their bodies. Especially here. They were, just like, when you die, you can just make a service. They'll come and take your body, put it in a freezing thing and they'll store it. Why? Because very soon we'll discover a cure for all diseases. We will thaw you, we'll cure your body and you'll have a new body. We'll bring you back to life. Even now there are many of those institutes that still have bodies that are frozen in the 80s because they are bound to keep them. What is the use? Right? So, like this material education will just reinforce your anarthas and keep you more bound in this material world. But the Shastras say there's only one way out of this. What is that? Dust from the lotus feet, Rajobhishekam. Dust from the lotus feet of a Vaishnava. In fact, the effect of the association of a Vaishnava can be very nicely understood in the life of Haridas Thakur. Thakur Haridas was born as a Muslim. Right? But when he was very young itself, he became very attached to Advaita Acharya. And Advaita Acharya, it is said, took compassion on Haridas Thakur. And he could clearly see that, because Advaita Acharya is the Supreme Lord himself, right? Now, Haridas Thakur is incarnation of Brahma. And so, Advaita Acharya could see that spark of devotional, life in Haridas Thakur. And though he was a very exalted Brahmana, and though associating with Muslims was very, very, looked down upon thing in that society, Advaita Acharya was very loving and always, associating with Haridas Thakur. It is said that all the people used to talk, why is this Brahmana going and doing this? What kind of, this thing is this? And there were so much of this thing going on. Once, it is said that there was some fire sacrifice that had to be done. And there was no fire available in the house. And so Advaita Acharya said, okay, go and get fire from some other Brahmana's homes. They went and looked, nobody's home, there was a fire. Then finally, Advaita Acharya said, go to Haridas Thakur's house, take some dry grass, he will create the fire and you bring it. And Haridas Thakur created the fire from his mantra when he was a Muslim. And then they brought that and did the sacrifice. So Advaita Acharya was saying, see how, you're all supposed to be brahmanas, you're all supposed to be, having fire in the house to do sacrifices. See, what are you all doing? And see even a person like this, what is capable of. And we know how Haridas Thakur's whole life later became the Namacharya and became such an exalted devotee of the Lord. So we see many instances when the young hippies over here in America came in touch with Srila Prabhupada, a pure devotee. What a transformation in their hearts. They went from being completely absorbed in material sense gratification and lost. Even by material standards, they were lost. Right? Even by basic material standards. They were so lost, and leading very sinful lives. Right? But by the association of a pure devotee, they completely transformed and became wonderful Vaishnavas. Right? So that's why it is said that, I think they're running a little late. Few more minutes? Okay. That's why it is said that one should find opportunities to associate with devotees. And then what happens? In the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. They are automatically revealed. When we have implicit faith in the Lord and the spiritual master. We see in Narada Muni's life, so many of devotees, right, come in touch with Narada Muni and their lives are transformed. Right? From the example of Mrugari, who was such a cruel hunter, who would half kill animals and just leave them to suffer to death. Right? He became such a wonderful Vaishnava. So many devotees, Narada Muni just touches and preaches to them. All through the Bhagavatam we hear this. So, one should understand that the only way we can get rid of the anarthas in our heart is by associating with the pure devotee. And we have this opportunity of having a pure devotee as our spiritual master. And we should understand how do you take the dust of the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada into our lives. Right? Physically we can go and take the dust of the lotus feet and do Guru Puja every day. But what else can we do to take the dust of the lotus feet of a Vaishnava? What does it mean? Follow their instructions. When you follow the instruction, that is the best way to please the spiritual master. And Srila Prabhupada has given us very nice guidelines on how to develop a really wonderful and pleasurable and enjoyable Vaishnava lifestyle. Right? There's nothing, we don't have to miss anything in life. Just like, from childhood, a child develops all these anarthas and gets more and more attracted to different things. Same way, we can develop attraction for spiritual things, spiritual activities, and that attraction can liberate us from this material world. Right? It sometimes, Shastras explain how spiritual activities and material activities look very similar. Right? July 4th weekend, people you go, they're also having parties on Friday evenings. Right? They're also having movie night. Right? We are also having movie night. Right? Only difference is what movie are you watching and what else are you doing. We are having movie night and having some prasadam and this thing. They are also having movie night, watching all kinds of horrible things and eating all kinds of unmentionable things and getting entangled more and more in sinful activities and sinful reactions. Right? So every aspect of our life can be transformed, can be connected by following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada and the guidelines he gave us on how to live life as devotees. And by that, Rajobhishekam Anartha Apagamaha. All the unwanted things in our heart will become cleansed. So this is an indicator. This is something we can introspect and look on ourselves. How much of anarthas do we still have left? Ready? Right? So that's a way for us to get rid of all these anarthas. So we'll stop here. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki, Bol Premanande.